Hello, I'm Carolina Rodriguez Buitrago, and today I am going to tell you how I plan my EFL flipped classes. Are you ready? First of all, I think of the topic. Not all of my lessons are flipped. Not all of my classes are flipped because I would go crazy. So I make decisions as to what needs to be flipped and why. So my tip to you is flip the most complex or boring content. So for example, those grammatical topics that are hard or those difficult communicative topics that students not necessarily like, those would be a good idea to flip in order to spice them up. You could also flip a component in your course. For example, in my EFL course, grammar and writing are flipped. So you can decide whether to flip listening and reading, writing, speaking, grammar, vocabulary, etc. according to the level of your students and the complexity of the content. The second thing is I decide on the type of flip that I will do. So traditional flip, do I want to send a video home and have activities done in class, or in-class flip? Do I want to have everything worked out in the classroom during the class period? This would depend on many factors. One of them is students' willingness, let's say, to work outside of class. Second is the type of students I have, how autonomous they are, etc. Normally what I do is at the beginning of the semester, I in-class flip a lot, and then I start giving them more responsibility as the semester progresses because they will have learned what it takes to prepare a lesson in my class. So that would be another tip that I give you. Start with in-class flip and then move progressively towards a more traditional flip. The third thing is I think of individual learning space and group learning space. So what is the sequence that I want to have, what are the activities that I'm going to do, and what are the materials that I'm going to use in each one of the spaces. Regardless if I'm doing an in-class flip or a traditional flip, I will think of both spaces because I need to think also of low-order thinking and high-order thinking skills. So I think of low-order thinking as the individual learning space and high-order thinking as the group learning space. So that helps me craft the whole lesson in my head. The fourth thing I do is I decide on the individual learning space materials and activities. So how am I going to give direct instruction activities to my students? Is it going to be in the form of a text, a video, or audio? Normally, I do accountability activity for the individual learning space. So for example, if I'm giving my students a text, I would use something like actively learn or insert learning for them to have some questions and some pointers as to how to proceed with the material. Also, if it's a text or a video, I would give them a Cornell note-taking format. They take notes using the Cornell notes, which includes notes, questions, and a summary, so that they engage actively with the content. So I decide on the accountability activity. Edpuzzle can be another possibility, or play posit. It all depends on the lesson and on my mood and on my time, because sometimes I have the time to create an Edpuzzle video like with questions and everything, but some other times I just print out some Cornell notes. So you will have to kind of play by ear to see how you feel more comfortable and what tools help you better. Then I decide on the materials, so precisely what I just said, the Edpuzzle or the Cornell notes or simple notes on a notebook or a sketch note. I mean, there are many possibilities. The fifth thing I decide on is the group learning space materials and activities. Now that I have liberated class time, from direct instruction, I have more time to do those things that I always dreamed of. So I have to think of them because now we have much more time. So I think of the lesson sequence, normally as I would in any lesson plan without flipping. I think of activities considering Bloom's taxonomy. So I get my hands on a picture of Bloom's taxonomy and I think of which high-order thinking skills I want my students to develop throughout the lesson. I decide on the actions and outcomes and the activities that I want to do based on Bloom. Then I consider student-centeredness, So how am I going to make the class geared towards my students' interests and needs? So sometimes I do choice boards, sometimes I do station rotation, I use board games, I use poster making, sketch note making, exercises like regular fill in the gap exercises, role plays, all these kinds of activities, just as long as they are centered on my students. Then I think of the materials. Do I need board games? Do I need dice, chips, cards, paper, markers, etc., etc.? And the assessment. How am I going to evaluate my students within that lesson and that group lesson? So let me walk you through one example lesson. So this is one for my upper intermediate English class. So the communicative topic is recipes and food, and the grammar topic is determiners and expressions of quantity. So the type of flip, it's a combination of traditional and in-class flip in this case. In the individual learning space, students will do a hyperdoc with all the grammar exercises to do at home independently. And in the group learning space, we'll do an in-class flip, which I call a grammar day. So in the individual learning space, this will be the first page of the hyperdoc. So they just go through the hyperdoc. There is another video on YouTube if you want to know what I'm talking about in terms of hyperdocs, and to see specifically these examples that I have here. I have a walkthrough on another YouTube video. In the group learning space, we do a grammar day, which is a mixed in-class flip, station rotation with practice activities. So in the station 1, students play a grammar game online. In station 2, they create a poster with a grammar structure. In station 3, they create a board game. They create it, not play it. In station 4, they discuss some questions. And in station 5, I have a grammar station just in case somebody wants to go and check some question or they have a confusion. So let me show you what they look like. So students talking, students doing their exercises, students checking the grammar station, so they can go to the computer and check, or just to the TV and the class to check the structure. They make posters, they design the grammar game. Yeah, here is a sample poster at the end, and then here are they answer some questions, and here playing the online game on the TV. Yeah. So as you can see, students are pretty much engaged during the whole process, and they had already checked their hyperdoc at home. So assessment, informal mastery checks in the stations. That's something that I learned from Kara Johnson, and I adapted the whole idea of informal mastery check. Also, Susan White also uses this term of informal mastery checks. And so what it is that when students are doing their tasks, I just go and ask them questions and probe, see if they are understanding what they're doing. I have some tricky, let's say, questions for them, grammatical more specifically, because I flip the grammar component. So you see where I'm going. The informal mastery checks are like mini quizzes that I do orally to my students. And in terms of formatting and everything, I'm very much of a paper note taker. So I would design I would visualize my in-class flip, like what would go in each one of the stations. Here, this is the future tenses grammar day in particular, so like I have what I would do in each one of the stations. And here's what I did to plan this video. So I mostly plan on paper. However, I have created some formats for when I do teacher training. I have created some formats, for showing teachers what I see and the things that I like to consider when planning a lesson. So I will share those with you on week 3. Okay. All right. So I really hope this helps. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can find me at CR Buitrago on Twitter or on our T+ community. Thank you so much.